So thank you everyone for joining us in the latest in the Miller Knoll Insight series online. We have had a huge amount of fantastic speakers, and today is no exception. Today we're joined by Simone Fenton Jarvis, and Simone describes herself as a workplace thought leader who's passionate about creating human-centric workplaces. So if that's how she describes herself, it is inevitable that she ends up writing a book all about that. And she's going to share some of her thoughts about that book, some of the findings, some of the inputs, and feel free to share any questions in the chat box as we go along. Simone, thank you for giving up your time. We're looking forward to a great session. Over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, and thanks for having me. So, little introduction to those that don't know me. My background has been in facilities management. As I've worked up, I have gone into more of the workplace realm, worked up to chief workplace officer in an organisation, and then a few years ago headed into the more consultancy arm. And I currently work for a company called Relogics. We're based out in Canada, so I'm a fully remote worker. Going over to the office on a quarterly basis, so hybrid you could say. And my organisation I work for, I basically spend my days looking at data that exists in workplaces to drive employee experience. So my role, I guess, has brought me here today to bring you this book. And I wrote it during lockdown. Which was a bit of a task, but you know, when you lose your social life, it kind of made it a little bit easier. So I'm going to talk you through a little bit about the book today, and please do put the questions in the chat as well. So I guess why the human-centric workplace, and I think, you know, really after years of talking and doing, I wanted to just capture what I thought the workplace should be about. And I wanted to put my values, my experiences, the stories that I hear, the world events and my purpose into a book, because I always found that there was a massive difference between my values and what I thought I wanted in the workplace and then what I was seeing being delivered. So this was really about getting it all in in paper and going, right, this is it end to end. So I'm going to give you an overview of what it is that the human-centric workplace is about. So what a strange couple of years it's been. You know, and I think despite the awful situation that we've been in, there have been so many positives. Positives that, you know, shouldn't have taken a pandemic to happen, but positives that, you know, for me reminded us all that we are all human, we are all connected. And, you know, the pandemic really helped me reset my boundaries, reminded me about what mattered, where my red lines were, the boundaries that I really didn't want crossing. It helped me to just reconnect with myself, my purpose, and the people around me. It, of course, obliterated my social skills at the same time, but you know, we're getting back to some kind of normality now. So, if you look at everything that, you know, some of the positives that happened during the pandemic, you've got people that are adopting technology like Zoom. Now, it might seem really normal for us, but when I see my 72-year-old nan on Zoom, that's crazy. Like, I just would never have expected that. And it meant that she wasn't lonely, she remained connected, and it was all these really nice impacts that you could see. If obviously you're in the UK, you've got a newfound appreciation for the NHS. Many appreciated it before, of course. But then also just the things like walking out with your friends in the park. You know, I'm a dog. I've got a dog, so walking the dog. I always see, you know, people in the park, and it's much busier now with people that are not just walking the dog, but just walking with a friend, which is really nice to see. And then, you know, I don't know what the toilet roll situation was like on a global scale, but in the UK, it was a little bit bleak at times. So, you know, even just appreciating the small things that you just wouldn't have expected and you just took for granted. And there were so many important messages that were kind of going out on social media and adverts, you know, things like the fact that abusers always work from home. And it was just raising awareness of some really crucial campaigns in a really important way. And highlighting that we were all in different situations. We were kind of, you know, the storm was different for us all. So lots of positives, but then also our realities were very, very different. You know, we had people that have got kids and they were trying to work from home. We've got people that have got puppies, and again, we're trying to work from home. You've got people that just didn't have the right setup. House shares, you know, one of the worst things I saw was somebody actually sat on the toilet with an ironing board in front of them with a laptop on it. And for me, it was like, you know, we are all in the same storm, but we're in very different boats. And I think that's the thing that I want us to remember. So, how do we create a workplace, I guess, of equality to make sure that this human-centric workplace is a viable and thing that can happen? Now, you know, I guess what does equality look like in a hybrid world? Well, we're all in the same storm, but we should be able to get the shelter that we need. And unfortunately, when you track back where some of the issues are kind of coming from, some of the issues that are being experienced, it goes much deeper than we realise, and it's a sense of equity that is actually that we need to do. You know, we need to get to the heart of what the inequality in society really is about. So things like the cost of childcare, the cost of healthcare, things just that are just, you know, fuel costs that are obviously rising as well. People are saying now they can't actually afford to work from home because they can't afford the heating bills. So they either work from home in the cold or they go in the office. So we're all in this different mix of environments. So, you know, how do we get to a point of, I guess, justice? You know, when will the reality mean that we address the sources of inequality and it becomes a reality that we all get justice and equality? So, you know, and that goes across the workplace, into society, into politics, and much deeper. So I think it's important to remember that, you know, the knock-on effect, and I'll get back to that in a second. So obviously, you know, the workplace, the way we work, our organisations and how they behave and how we behave as employees, employers, it's had a lot of attention over the last couple of years. And on one hand, it's everything that people in FM and workplace would have ever wanted. We've finally got that seat at the table and the recognition, the attention. But actually, what is happening now is that everybody's got an opinion. And you kind of it's getting quite busy out there with so many different opinions. So some, you know, the things I'm going to talk about today is grounding data and research and trying to avoid that opinion as much as some of it is my opinion as well, but it is grounded on experience and research as well. So there's been a lot of public announcements like the ones on screen here. People that are saying that they're office first, the hybrid or remote first. Now, what the future holds for all of these organisations is definitely not a cookie cutter approach. And you can see across these organisations how actually hybrid means different things to different people. And it means different things to different departments in the same organisation. Not one size fits all is going to work. So for me, you know, it makes sense that we're all still in that kind of element of confusion, what to do next, looking into the crystal ball and thinking, what does the future hold? And that's okay. You know, I think we need to do a lot of testing and, you know, measuring and iterating and keep going around. You know, the workplace will never be finished. And it's how we get to the point of accepting that, because we're very much, I guess, in our organizations, should I say, very much in the pattern of, you know, seeing it as a project, and when that project is done, you know, you can wait for the next one. We all know working in the industry, it's just not how we work. It is a continuous thing. So, you know, what do we need next? And I'm saying is what we need next is the human-centric workplace. And I guess just to share some of the things why. Now, these stats are across the UK and Europe. Now, if you look at the average kind of workplace, you've got 1 in 4 people that have a mental illness, 1 in 7 that are neurodivergent, 1 in 5 that have a disability, 1 in 10 identifies LGBTQ+. You've got 16 different personality types, 1 in 2 people are parents, and we've got 5 generations. When you then add in the religion, race, level of education, socioeconomic status, it's a bit of a minefield. And actually, the human-centric workplace is really the only option forward. Now, the thing that we do need to remember, as much as we are a diverse bunch, we are still all skin, blood, and bones. And we still all have them real, going back to hierarchy, Maslow, hierarchy of needs by Maslow, we've still got them crucial things that we need to be met as a human being. And it's important to remember that we've got more in common together than we have that divides us. And I think it is important to remember that. So when we look at what the future of work is, and how we function as humanity, we need to make sure that we're bearing that in mind, that we're really good at dividing and trying to conquer, and actually let's bring people together a little bit more. So before we discuss what a human-centric workplace is, when I was writing the book, I went down a bit of a thing of, well, what does it mean to be a human being first? Before we look at work, what is it to be a human being? And all the research points back to the fact that wanting to understand who we are, where we come from, and how we evolved is part of what makes us human. And actually, it goes back thousands of years, and it's poets, philosophers, anthropologists, religious bodies, scientists, politicians, artists. Everybody was questioning what is it, what is being human, what is life, what are we here for? And despite many efforts, we've got many diverse answers. It's very quite non-conclusive, because believing actually in a single answer, it would create silos between what our brain was saying, what our emotions were saying, the body, and so forth. So we just must continue to understand that there's many angles that make up the whole human being. So if we look at three people in particular, you've got Aristotle here on the left, and to be a human for him meant having a goal, having a purpose, belonging, and to live a happy life. You've then got Karl Marx in the middle, and for him, believing humans, he was all about we're social creatures and we can only develop if we were in a society. And then we've got Clifford Geertz, who's an anthropologist, and he very much refers to human nature being unfinished because we require culture to actually complete us. So the interactions between our individual beings, our settings, our physical, our virtual, the natural social worlds, and all of the symbols and structures that determine what it means to be a human being. So there's definitely a thread that's running through the different opinions from history. And when you start applying this to the workplace, it's about people. We're about people. We need people. And there is a lot of research coming out around the increase in loneliness, the impact on mental health during the pandemic. And I think, going forward, why, what's the purpose of the office? It goes back to people. What do we want to go to the office for? So if you look back in time, and depending on what your beliefs are, if you look back 300,000 year human evolution, we work to eat and avoid being eaten. I am glad that that's not the case anymore. But at the same time, we had different meanings and different purposes, and it was coming from other places. Work wasn't our be all and end all. We was about spirituality, we were about art, religion, science. And as we've evolved our identities like parent, friend, nationality, religious beliefs, hobbies, our careers, it's all become intertwined. And we are now in a situation where we're very much kind of juggling, and we've almost forgotten the crucial things, what it means to be a human being, and how actually we need to take them things when we go back to an office, to work, wherever you're working from. Bringing that almost the whole self to the workplace, whether it be physical or virtual. So work isn't about survival anymore. It is that extension of our identity. We've got social connectedness, you've got culture, belonging, purpose, the ability to think, all of these human things that we really should be taking to work, and taking our whole selves and not hiding, the things like worries and fears and anxieties, but at the same time maintain our boundaries. What are we comfortable with sharing? And it goes back for me, it's, you could look at the whole self, and it's, does that mean you take everything to work? And it's like, no, actually, it's about what you want to take to work and feeling that you can take whatever you want to take. It shouldn't be pressurized or restrained or anything like that. but we have started to look and appear robotic. And I think, is this seriously the best we can do? We can do better than this. So if you look just in general, people in organizations, yes, we were once cogs in the machine. Yes, we existed to drive financial success for organizations. If you go back to workhouses, but people don't want to be managed and controlled and worn down like that. And the employee experience has obviously evolved. It continues to evolve as it should. And I think the next difficult thing is that we talk about culture as if it's something that evolves naturally within an organization. And organizational cultures where people thrive and where people want to be in, it's been that destination people want to be in. It takes that conscious and consistent effort. It takes time, it takes patience, and we always need to be making sure that we're doing that healthy nudge in the right direction. Because if we don't, without them healthy nudges to the right culture, we're going to create this toxic workplace, because we look at human nature and we're very good at creating territories, dividing, having our team, their team. So culture, to bring truly people together, we need to be aligned in the purpose of why we're in that workplace. So, this research I'll talk through now is the cultural iceberg. Now, yes, it's 40 odd years old, but for me, it's still really relevant. And contrary to beliefs and actions, as an industry, we don't have to keep trying to recreate the same things over and over again. And I know we're really good at doing that. So let me share some research from 40 years ago. And if you look at the top of the iceberg, the organization, is what you can see on the outside, is the physical and the behaviors. So how are people behaving? What does the workplace look like? What is the line of okay and not okay behaviors that you can see? What is turnover like and presenteeism? What's the dress code like? And obviously that varies quite a lot between sectors as well as seniority. I used to work in an office where the PA would actually polish her boss's shoes in the office, and for me, like I was struggling a little bit with that. So it's just examples like that. And then you've got the attitudes and beliefs that are under the surface, and it's about the stories that are being told. Who or what is immortalized? What do people just believe without checking the facts? When you hear a story and think, oh, that can't be right, but actually if people going, oh yeah, that sounds about right, what are them stories that are being told? Who holds the power? How do people feel about leadership, the processes, the technology, the spaces? It's more around them attitudes and beliefs, the things that just sit below the surface, where we choose when to share them things. And then you've got the bottom of the iceberg. Now, the bottom of the iceberg is the values bit. It's the deepest bit down. What are them values? Are they known and practiced? Is it aligned to the strategy and of the organization and the mission and purpose? And is there any resistance to change when you try and make any changes? Or actually is change aligned to the values and people are well on board? And if you put this in, the research shows that if you look at an organization, only 4% of problems are known to the exec teams, 9% are known to the middle management, 74% are known to team leaders, but in all cases, 100% of the problems were known to the people. So, there's an important lesson here about asking questions, listening, being curious, and just not almost, to use the IBM phrase, not to be a user, and to, a million meetings is worth that opinion, to talk to people and listen to people. Because actually, as cheesy as it might sound, it wasn't the top of the iceberg that sank the Titanic, it was the bottom. They thought they cleared the ice, and then it got hit, apparently, as far as we know. And all the research shows that. So, there's a lot to be said for understanding what's going on below the surface. So as the workplace has evolved, we've gone very much from being a utility, being that cog in the machine. What do we need to work? We need a desk, a chair, a phone, a computer. We might sit there 9 to 5. We're measured on our input, presenteeism. We might hoard information because we're protecting our own job. There's lots of emails flying around. We know that we've got predefined work, things to do, a to-do list. We don't feel like we've got a voice, and it's a job. And as we've evolved, it then moved into more of the productivity. So what do we actually need to do our job better? You know, how do we get improvements out of people? How do we improve efficiencies? There was obviously challenges around measuring that, but also there was lots of automation of repeatable processes that also were driving productivity. And then we moved into the engagement phase, and it was, you know, how can we make sure people are happier and they want to be with our organisation? And this is really where the rise of annual surveys were coming in. The focus is on culture, the mission statements and values. And it was suddenly where, you know, all the organisations put their values up on the wall to show that it was a great place to work. But then again, we shifted, we evolved again. And it was then into experience, you know, how can we create a destination that people want to go to? And all of that was, you know, all around purposeful design. We're about individual people, diversity, equality. We want flexibility and agility. We want to be measured on output, not the input. We want to work with people, collaborate, share information. We want to use technology to enable that communication and collaboration from wherever we're working. We want to learn, we want to be creative, and we want to be having a voice, and we want to be heard. So the next evolution for me is now human, the human workplace. So what could the human-centric workplace look like? Well, you know, how can we ensure actually our people, our communities, our planet are thriving? So how do we build that sense of community, the belonging, the purpose? How can we make sure that our behaviours and actions are having a positive effect on the planet? How do we make sure that we're not leaving work tired at the end of the working day and don't want to give back to our local community? You know, how can we make sure we go, oh yeah, actually, I'm going to do some volunteering. I'm going to look after myself. I'm going to go to the gym. I feel good. I don't leave work and I feel drained. It's getting back to them, the well-being and the boundaries as an individual as well. To have that voice and be heard, a very utilitarian approach. But we ultimately we want meaning, connection, community. But we still, you know, let's make it lean, but and underpin it by technology. And I'll come on to that in a little bit later. So let's give you a whiz through of culture. Now, there's been a lot of talk around culture, especially, you know, in the news, on LinkedIn, and it feels like, you know, people are saying, well, just let's have a good culture. But I don't think many actually know how to get to that point. And I'm not surprised, because actually firstly, you know, there's not a right and wrong, empirically right and wrong culture. What's right for me might not be right for you. What's wrong for me might not be wrong for you. So I think that's the first thing that we need to remember, that when people leave an organisation and say, oh, it was a bad culture, don't work there. Well, it was a bad culture for them. And, you know, ask your own questions and make your own mind up. Now, the other thing is how can we make sure that we maintain a culture when actually it only takes one hire to change a culture overnight? You know, it's this constant moving, evolving thing, and it's, you know, organizational growth, recruitment, retention, leadership, strategy. What's the customer needs? What's the market trends? What's technology doing? So, you know, measuring culture is a necessity, but how do we do it in a way that we're measuring it not just through an annual survey that is at one point in time? How do we pick up on the people that are feeling pain in their roles, that are maybe driving a toxic workplace? You know, there's been lots of talk recently around how the levels of gossip has increased amongst some cultures in organisations, and it's because of remote work, and it's been pinpointed back to that. So there's a lot of interesting research that's coming through that will carry on coming through for years ahead, I'm sure. So when we're looking at how to measure the employee experience, and for what is that culture, the 9 things that I've come up with are employee engagement, well-being and happiness, psychological safety, recruitment and retention, the customers, the planet, innovation, finances, and productivity. Now, if we measure things within them 9 areas, that's what's going to lead to truly understanding the culture of that organisation. It's not just a one tick box, yes, we've got a good culture because the people say so. It's much more holistic than that. Okay. So let's look at just a few things here around ways of working. Now, I guess there's been so much talk around hybrid working, and there's no doubt that organisations and leaders are facing this constant and mounting pressure to almost say, you know, what is it we're going to be working like next? And there's a massive shift in expectations from employees. Obviously, and this was pre-pandemic, and then post-pandemic, it's just kind of been accelerated even more. So there's lots of terms that we use interchangeably within the sector. There's a lot of things that we say but don't probably truly mean what it means in practice. And you know, the term hybrid was actually coined by the media. It wasn't the sector, it wasn't our industry, it wasn't our profession. It was the media, and that brings in a whole new challenge. So we have become obsessed with a little bit about definitions, and I want us to come away from definitions and get into the how, what it means and how we're going to do it. So for me, you know, despite the whole initial panic of getting the mass exodus out of the workplace and out of our offices, thanks to, you know, the workplace ninjas, the FM teams, technology, the leadership, lots of resilience, we're functioning. And what felt like was going to be quite impossible, it became workable and possible, even to the extent that we want to continue it. So, you know, if you played a part in this, well done, because it was no mean feat. I know it wasn't. But you know, going forward for me, there's still a space in our employee experience for the physical office. And I'm not just saying that because of my experience, but you know, it's an important space that can drive connection, collaboration, belonging. And we have got this once in a lifetime opportunity to reimagine how we work, what the workplace means for us. And I want us to just drop the labels now and just focus on how. And it's the flexible working practices, agile mindset, activity-based working, and smart technology. And if you pinpoint back to all of the conversations that have been happening and all the challenges that organisations have been having, it will fit into one of them buckets. And if you find something that doesn't fit into one of them buckets, please tell me. And you know, let's just get back to how. What does it mean? Let's not look at the definition. Too many organisations are still coming to me saying, can you do smart working? Can you do hybrid working? Can you implement this change project? Want to do activity-based working? And when you say, what do you mean by that term? Not many people actually know what they want to achieve. They just want people to be happy at work, and they want to build recruitment, retention, and obviously productivity, and you know, make sure the business is thriving, and the well-being, and it all goes back to this. But actually, let's just focus on them 4 core things. So when we look at space, and the reasons why I guess we've got the workplace, I guess even pre-pandemic, there was definitely a battle on everybody's hands around, well, what does the space look like? How does it function? How do we make sure that once we've designed that space, it doesn't age really, really quickly along, like, you know, design trends that are in fashion at that point in time? And the thing that we need to obviously do going forward is just remember the why. What is the why of that workplace? What is the space actually enabling? And we can look at the hygiene factors, you know, go back to Maslow, go back to Neil Usher's elemental workplace. You look at them and there's no doubt we need to cater for them. And it's not just about what it looks like, it's about what it feels like. And the reason that people go to a physical place, and that reason is going to be different for everybody. But I talk about the 6 C's. So we communicate, we collaborate, we contemplate, we concentrate, and it's crucial, right? We do concentrate in an office. We just have to have the right space to do so. We are creative, and we're curious. We're human beings. The key thing is obviously that it'll never be finished, and that the data that we then need to collect is key to making sure that we're constantly evolving. And that data often comes in the form of the technology that we're using. So if you look at our experiences over the last few years, we've had these hyper-personalized spaces in our homes with the latest technology, and it's making our lives easier. And we choose what technology we want in our homes to make our lives easier. But then when we go back to our organizations, we haven't got that control. We're actually going back to an office that has got probably far too many cables to choose from, slow Wi-Fi, no control over the temperature or the light. It's just a different experience. So how do we make sure that that experience flows through into the workplace? Because we can't expect people to feel that tension, that pain of the different technologies from home to the workplace. It's going to be a massive off-putting thing for people. So I just want to share this slide that is using the research from the CBI. And this is talking about what technology is needed ultimately for an easy workplace from a plug and play perspective, what's intuitive, how do we build an experience that is high, that people will follow the rules because it's the path of least resistance. How do we make sure that we're not just putting gimmicks into that workplace? Not every organization has got a need for a robot vacuum cleaner. Some organizations have. Okay, so how do we make sure that, we're beating the technology that we have at home, or at least matching it, that we're simplifying and automating what we can, which then leaves people to do the more human-centric tasks. So, for example, look at a visit management system. Somebody arrives at the workplace, do you have a digitized system that's going to collect all the information you need, and the person is then able to build a connection with them on a more human level? How have you traveled here today? How was your travel? How are you? What would you like to drink? All of them things that we just haven't experienced in the last couple of years because we've not been going to offices. How can we give that first impression back? And make sure that people are not just sat there filling in lots of forms when they come to your workplace. I went somewhere the other day and it took me 15 minutes to get in just to confirm that I didn't have COVID. I've not left the country recently. 15 minutes, and I just thought this is not the way forward, what nobody wants. So how can we continue to evolve? And for me, when we're using these systems, we need to look carefully at the data that's coming off the back of them. So what I do in my day-to-day job is take different data sets. So it could be occupancy sensors, it could be surveys, badging data, lease data, HRIS data, and actually is to simplify it and make sure that the data stories are all stacked upon each other and it's coming out with a clear set of actions, what the organisation needs to do next. And just to bring that to life a little bit, and I think this is quite an important one, too many organisations are planning their spaces based on what their desk booking system is showing. Now, this leaves a massive problem because we know that people's intentions are very different from their actual behaviours. Now, if you look at this organisation, this data that I'm sharing on the screen now, this is showing 632 spaces. Actually, only 124 were booked. You've got 121 that are being squatted at, 29 where they just didn't show at all. Now, granted, this is likely as well because of the time period I've done the snapshot from, a supply and a demand issue. And as the demand ramps up and the supply ramps down, yes, people may feel that they need to book spaces. But even today, I'm still listening to people say, oh, we're doing our return to work and our sharing ratios based off what people are wanting to do, based off the booking system. So it just shows you the impact of making sure we're bringing the right data sources together to find the right answers. Now, if you look to, the night before work or the morning in the workplace, the morning before you go to the workplace, as a human being in a human-centric workplace, this is what I imagine it like, okay? And put in the chat whether you agree with this or not. So you wake up, or it could be the night before, whenever you want to do your planning, and it's why do I work? What am I doing? Who am I working with? When do I work? Where is the best place to work? How do I feel that day? Do I need to pick up the kids? Do I need to walk the dog? I'm expecting a parcel. Do I want to go to the gym at lunchtime? There's a lot of things that should be factored in whether people leave their home to go to work or not. It's not as simple as I've got to go to the office today anymore. And if you look at the coffee shop, the co-working, the office, the home, There's fors and against for each of these solutions, and really that's where we need to meet the individual needs. And are people going to them spaces because they can, because they want to, or because they have to? And that is a very different experience for them people, depending on which answer they give. Are they going to an office because they have to? Because that's going to be a massive issue for that organisation from a recruitment point, when they can go and work for a competitor where they don't have to go to the office. So this is what we're seeing in the data at the moment. So understanding the workplace. It's not about a free-for-all. It's not about just looking at what competitors do, what it says on LinkedIn. We need to understand what our why is, the role of the physical workplace, and how that enables the purpose of the organisation and for our people to thrive. And ways of working shouldn't be a cookie-cutter approach across sectors, industries, organisations, even across departments. We've all got our individual needs. And we need to obviously make sure that we're capturing that granular level of detail of the data to understand the why, to continue to evolve. And we need to know the why and the how before we prescribe the where. And I might be preaching to the converted here. Let me know. But it's the why that keeps us focused. It's the why that makes us dig deep during tough times. It's the why that we come up with creative solutions to get a step closer to the thing we want to achieve. And actually, where a place where people thrive is that place where people know and they connect with the purpose, and they've been enabled to treat it like a human being. And it sounds at times like like this romanticized view that I've got of the workplace, and it's not achievable, but actually it is achievable because I've seen it and I've done it. It's not easy. It does take the time, the effort, the skill, the consciousness, but it's totally worth it. And we've all got a part to play. This isn't just the CEO. It's not just senior leadership. Every single individual in that workplace, it's us that are driving the culture of an organisation. It's how we behave and the behaviours that we accept as well. So just remember that you don't feel constrained by an organisational culture and think, actually, how can I work to change this? So each organisation is obviously different. Its own makeup, its own challenges, its own cultures, priorities, finances, and all of that does need to be taken into account. But just go back to the why, and you'll find a lot of answers in the why. And something I just want to kind of leave you with really is the planet bit, because I say the planet bit, it's obviously a crucial element of everything here. And just some stats that I really want to share with you that I always, I've been looking at these stats for probably a year and a half that I wrote the book now, and every time I present them, it baffles me. So we've got 8 billion people in the planet, and we've got $80 trillion in circulation. 8 men have the same wealth as the poorest half of the world. A FTSE 100 CEO earns the same amount of money as 10,000 people working in a garment factory in Bangladesh. In the last 30 years, the income of the bottom 50% has been zero, whereas the income of the top 1% has been 300%. So the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. And it's not because we're getting paid less, it's because the standard of living and the cost of living is obviously increasing. And our wages are just not reflecting the cost of living. You then look at business travel. Business travel has grown 3 to 5% each year leading up to the pandemic. I'm really looking forward to seeing what obviously it does over the coming year or so. And then you look at the world's biggest 10 corporations together. They've got a revenue that is the same as the revenue of 180 countries combined. So 10 corporations, 180 countries, which I find insane. And then you look at developing countries that on average are losing 100 billion a year every year to people that are tax dodging, to organisations, corporations that are tax dodging. And if you look at Kenya in particular, they're losing 1.1 billion every single year in tax exemptions. A lot of it are coffee beans. And that is twice its budget for the health in a country where women have a 1 in 40 chance of dying in childbirth. And then you throw in this. Now, this stat is from before Russia and Ukraine. Global military expenditure has seen its largest increase in a decade. We're now spending $1,917 billion every year on global military. And that, unless aliens come down from the sky, I don't want us to be fighting like this. I don't know if you agree or not, but it feels insane that we're in a situation where people are staying on the public transport to stay warm, and yet we're spending that much money on global military. There's something that's missing here. We can create a fairer world based on that human economy, and we obviously need to make sure that we're now putting people before profit, and that we need to make sure that people are the bottom line, not profit. So I just want to leave you with one final bit from the book, and it's that if we listen and show compassion and empathy, if we respect our differences and uphold the highest levels of integrity, we might just change the world with one small human act at a time. So we can all play a part in this. The future of work is human. We're all humans. So let us know what you're going to do to go and drive a better world. I'd be really interested to hear. So please fire questions away, and I'll hand back to Mark.
Thank you very much, Simone. There is a question about whether you'll be sharing your slide deck. I haven't asked you that before yet. Is that possible to do that?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Great, thank you. We'll include a link to that. I'll upload it somewhere so that you can get that in tomorrow's follow-up email. Thank you very much. So, as I did say, that ask for difficult questions, and they've come in. So and thank you, Pontus, for this question. And thank you for a great talk as well, Simone. Love it. And I want everyone, if you can, when we put up the recording, go back and listen, especially to that last bit, and do something about it, if you can. A question from Pontus. Is human-centric workplace synonymous with a colleague-centric workplace? Or is it something much wider than just diversity and employee experience? You mentioned family members and friends and life outside the office and work hours. If not, then how should HR and managers approach the future of work as human?
Yeah, thanks, Pontus, for that one. I'm not getting you a coffee next time I see you. I'm joking. So I think for me, the term HR, firstly, I would like to see a shift to people and culture, or humans and culture, rather than HR and everything that is synonymous with the old version of HR. HR obviously not about just kind of hiring and firing. So I think that's the first part of it. I think the second bit of colleague experience against human experience, I do find it's a wider impact. So if we look at employee experience, colleague experience, it's generally been about what's happening in the physical workplace. Whereas I think from a human experience, I'd like it to shift to what actually happens when you're working virtually. So the more of the workplace thinking that's kind of coming out of the UK, I guess. And also the impact that has. Can the organisation, for instance, make sure that their people have got enough energy to do volunteering? And I think that's where the human experience bit comes in. So hopefully I've answered that. If not, give me a shout and I'll add to it.
Thank you. Yet another tough one from John. What's the research? I think you mentioned employees understand 100% of the problems, and who was researching it? I agree with the need to consult, but that sounds unlikely that 100% of employees know the problems.
Yeah, I'll send you the research paper in the tomorrow's mail out. It's a piece of research. It's about 40 years old now. But it's quoted up and down academically across the world. It's the cultural iceberg. So I'll put a link in for tomorrow's email for you. You don't have to go searching. It's under paywall, so I'll give it you for free.
Great, thank you. And just like this morning's session, someone's asked you, could you repeat the 6 C's again, slowly, yeah, sure, so that they can make a note of them. Thank you.
So concentration, contemplation, communication, collaboration, creativity, and curiosity.
Thank you, and well done on that. And great, thank you. A question from Una: can culture be mediated in spaces that are not the physical office building, like co-working spaces or home spaces or the digital, and I hate this word, phygital spaces?
Yeah, and I think this is a challenge that many have had at the moment. It's how do we drive the positive elements of our culture when we're not in the physical space? So how do we drive culture in the remote world? And for me, it goes back to the culture being behaviors. So small example, do Slack messages start off with "Good morning, how are you today?" Yeah, and then ask a question, or is it just asking a question? That is a sign of culture. Do people want to talk to each other? I'm looking around me. What's my signs of culture? I'm a person that works fully remote from home. I've got my coaster there, and I've got my Relogix mug there that my organisation sent to me and was like, "Don't forget to take a break." That's the sign of the culture. And I guess it's all the small things that make up that remote experience. Are people on calls talking over the top of each other? Are they putting the hand up to speak next? Do people feel seen and heard? Have people got the cameras on? It's all them small things. There's a reason why I still go to visit my colleagues quarterly, and it's because I still want that physical face to face as well. And if Relogix had an office in the UK, then I would go to it more often than quarterly. But that's my choice. So look at the small things. I think it is still doable to drive that culture. Physical space is just an aspect of it.
Thank you. Amy asked the question, what are the simple things that people in a business can do to influence the people culture rather than waiting for the leadership team to lead on the change?
Yeah, I think there's an element of there's holding leadership to account, but then taking responsibility as an individual. So if you see a behavior that is not in keeping with, the culture of the organization or how you would want to be treated, then it's a case of calling it out and in respectful discussion, obviously. I don't want you to start brawling in the workplace. But talking to somebody and saying, actually, I was offended by that, or that upset me, or however the conversation needs to go, because if we're not holding people to account and responsible in the moment, when you refer back to it 6 months later in someone's performance review, they're not going to remember it. They need to hear it in the moment. So I think encouraging everybody as individuals to just raise issues as they happen.
Great, thank you. Nicole asks this, and listen to the question very carefully, because there's something in here that's immediately hit me here. So here we go. Do you have any best practices for balancing equity within each department of the organization, i.e. everyone in the company can work from home 2 to 3 days a week, but leave it up to their individual managers to determine the specifics of how and when, etc.?
Yes, I'm actually working with an organisation at the moment where we've put in new ways of working. And the new ways of working, and instead of saying 3 days and 2 days, because then that's kind of not very inclusive for people that may be part-time, we say around 40% of your time is in the office, 60% is in a different space. So that is the guide, and then it's up to actually the departments to say, okay, so what does that mean for our team? So looking at having the team operating kind of etiquette, the procedures with like that. What day, do they get together as a whole team? Making sure that the whole team does have time together. Making sure that they're still cross-pollinating across the organisation. It's definitely making our leaders work a little bit more, and thinking about how to make sure we're driving that value. And just I think as well, like the things that come to mind are making sure that people have got the same technology, the right technology. There's a piece yesterday on Goldman Sachs, and it was, the senior leaders are now able to take unlimited holidays, but you have to be a senior leader, a managing director, or a partner. And I had a bit of a facepalm moment because I just thought that's not helping the situation, because everything that's come out of Goldman Sachs has been about how the juniors are getting burnt out because of the workload. And now we've just given all the seniors more time off. So there's things like that, and it definitely has to be equity right across the company for me.
Yeah, I read an article, I read a comment on that said actually when you have unlimited holidays, you tend to take less, and I'd love to know where that came from, but I can almost understand that. It's that you kind of, you're almost forced to take your 26 days, but when it's unlimited, you kind of think, oh yeah, I'll get round to it. And then
Yeah.
no one makes you take it in the last month kind of thing.
Yeah, we've got an unlimited holiday allowance. It's been in for a couple of months now, and you feel this like, I won't say guilt, but there's definitely a like a consciousness of like you don't want to look like you're taking the mickey. So there's definitely like a thought there, and I guess you've got to manage people for the 95% of behaviours, not the 5% of people that might take the mickey, I guess. So.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Una, for putting the 6 Cs in the chat box in case anyone missed it. That's really helpful of you. A question from Anu. How has the role of the corporate real estate leader changed, and what can we do to align with the new expectation around the workplace culture?
I think how the roles are changing, and I guess so. I have quite a lot of debates around CRE versus FM, the role of changing, because I think it goes not just back to the vertical that organisation's in and how big the team is, how much property they've got. But if we take an overarching thing of CRE, I guess what I'm seeing right now is the need to be much more collaborative, the need to push data from things and pull data from things to then join dots up. We can't just now set a location strategy without different data sets that are going to enable us to make a more holistic future vision approach, because there's a whole thing here around what's the future of the HQ. Does that go back to the CRE team? Does it go back to the management of the organization? Where does that responsibility sit? Is there a need for a HQ anymore, and where is that HQ? So I think there's definitely much more now streamlining across what people need to consider and talk about, and much more alignment, I think, as well between CRE and the property teams. I think previously I've felt quite a lot of friction between certain teams, but it just feels like that's got much better now. I'd love to hear your experiences as well, and please reach out and share them as well.
Thank you, Simone, for an excellent session. It's 5 minutes to the hour, so I am going to say thank you very much. Thank you for great insights. Really enjoyed that and really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.